be.
Yeah. So that he joins.
Yeah, it's a good thought.
We need him. We need because I want to call the reception to say, hey,
Yeah.
your guy,
Let
he's the
him
link.
join.
Mm. He's the one who said he wanted virtual. He's the link.
That's right.
Don't run away now. Because the guy I know, they said he's on leave. That one was not going to be playing games.
Yeah.
He's a straightforward man.
Tell me when you think it's okay to start. Doesn't seem okay.
But the other hall, is it clear now? The dining place.
The ushers are in there now.
There are two of these ushers.
What's that?
They negotiate with people.
Oh,
We are told you need to go.
you need them to be more.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Grab a glass.
Yeah.
Hmm?
We'll make that suggestion. Give that feedback. Your ushers are too soft. Too polite.
Yeah.
Too polite.
We're not voting here. We're not here for elections.
Yeah, right.
Yes, it's not. I didn't see a lot of people outside. I don't know where.
Daily marketplace.
It's just so empty. So I'm not too sure. What do you think? Huh? There's no. Just. What's your visa? Majority. The numbers don't look so great, but I will just start.
But do we have the figures?
I don't know. I didn't see many people there.
No, I mean the ones who are supposed
Who
to
we're
present.
supposed to
They're here.
have. They're here. We have Anita, we have
Those
Justin.
ones are there.
Let's move. Let's move. Let's move.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I hope you had a good lunch, like I did. So I'm going to ask one more time, good afternoon, to see if there's energy. I had injera. I don't know what you had. Good afternoon. That's better. Okay, so we should start our afternoon session. I think that we still have a few people coming in slowly, but in the interest of time, we will start. And it's a very interesting session because if you recall, this morning we ended our morning session just before lunch discussing how to integrate climate smart agriculture into national planning processes. And we had a very interesting conversation that, you know, folks from the countries were talking to us about some of the things they've done, what has been successful, and we also had a sense of how to do it. Remember the presentation from Madame Esterine Photobong from Auda Nepad, and also the FS CAP presentation by Johannes Walk from Unique Land Use. So I felt that was very interesting, but that was largely at the national level. So we are a bit interested in seeing how are we organized around learning, evidence generation, and knowledge management at the regional level? What are the regional platforms that exist, if any, especially in Eastern and Southern Africa, these two regions that we have most of the FS CAP project operating in, and what's the experience with those regional platforms? So to help us discuss this, I'm going to invite three people to come up and join me on stage here. That's Oliver Kipkogei, who's from IGAD. Oliver, are you here? He's coming up. Please clap for him as he comes up. It's not easy to come up here. And then following him is Justice Zwaita, who's from the Southern Africa region. So Oliver is from the Eastern Africa region. Justice Zwaita is from Southern Africa region. Where is Justice? Oh, he's coming. Also give him a clap. Yes, and then just to listen and help us to, think through this and tell us what the main points might be coming from our conversation, I'm going to invite somebody from AUDA, which is Dr. Manyeu Mutamba, to come and join. I know I kind of ambushed him with this one, but I'm always confident when it comes to Dr. Manyeu. Thank you for accepting and for joining this too. Okay, so we'll make this short and sweet and try to learn at the regional level. How are we coordinating? How are we learning together on CSA? And I'm going to start with Oliver, who's actually from ICPAC. Maybe, Oliver, you should start by saying a little bit, just in like a few seconds, something about yourself. And then I'll ask you to take a few minutes to tell us about the CSA platforms in this region. We're actually in the Eastern region. The regional CSA platforms, a few of the elements, why we have them, what value they bring, and things like that. You have examples of those platforms. Before I jump to you, Zwaita, Justice, for also your take from the Southern Africa side. So over to you.
Thank you very much. My name is Oliver Kipkogei, and I work as a regional agrometeorologist at IGAD ICPAC. So it's a pleasure to be here today, representing my director, Dr. Abdi Fidar, who could not be here with us today because of other engagements. So maybe to just mention a few of the regional platforms that we have in the Eastern Africa, some of the evidences and data. So I will start with the regional platforms. So we actually have what we call the user interface platforms at the regional level. The first one is the Greater Horn of Africa Climate Outlook Forum. So this is actually a regional forum that is held 3 times in a year, and it's actually anchored within the 3 seasons that we have in the southern east equatorial parts and the northern parts of the Greater Horn of Africa. And in this region, in this platform, we give climate information services as part of contributing to CSA. And we have also sector focal points. For the agriculture sector, for example, we have focal points from all the countries. And as a result of the information, we design what is some of the CSA practices to mitigate against some of the climate extremes, and also take advantage of the opportunities that is presented. There is also the aspect of so in this platform, for example, we advise farmers to make strategic and also tactical decisions, like, for example, when to plan, giving information like onset, the seasonal outlook, among others. We also have other platforms like for food security, like Food Security Nutrition Working Group, where it's actually chaired by IGAD. And this is a platform where we get monthly updates on food security. We develop bulletins on this, and we also contribute actually to the global and regional crisis on food security, which is actually one of the reference reports in terms of food security in the region. Just to mention other few platforms, there is the Transboundary Pest Platform for coordinating pests in the Greater Horn of Africa, IGAD region. There is the, among other platforms, all the way from regional to subnational levels. There is also the aspect of decision now coming to the data and evidence. There is the aspect of decision support tools, early warning tools that we have developed in the region. And it gives statistics all the way up to subnational levels that are relevant for our national agencies. So just to mention a few of the platforms, we have the East African Hazards Watch, which is actually our one-stop shop for risk information. We have risk information across thematic areas, cutting all the way from, we have Pest Watch, we have near real-time monitoring of agriculture, we have Drought Watch, where we monitor in near real time for basically anticipation. Lastly is to mention about some of the CSA activities that we have done. And there is actually one initiative, maybe just to focus on this, but we have many, where we try to take climate information to smallholder farmers to enhance decision-making at regional level, climate-proof our extension systems, and also enterprise creation of adaptation enterprises as a way of enhancing resilience. So I want also to welcome maybe you to our marketplace, the IGAD marketplace, where we can showcase some of the impacts that as a result of different initiatives that we have undertaken on CSA in the Greater Horn of Africa region. Thank you.
Thank you, Oliver. Yeah. I just want to shift straight to you, just then I'll have a conversation with both of you and dig a bit deeper. So just take a few minutes also and introduce us to, just as Oliver's done, who you are, and maybe mention a few of the, if there are any regional platforms that are involved in CSA in the Southern Africa region as well, and what they do.
Thank you, Mr. Facilitator. My name is Justice Waita. I'm the coordinator for Southern Africa Climate Smart Agriculture, which is hosted by FANAPAN, which was launched in 2018 in Mozambique, Maputo, whose function, right, is the regional CSA Alliance with broader climate smart alliance architecture, focus from knowledge exchange, policy alignment, implementation support. What is SACSA? I think I gave you the definition. What is our core role? Our core role in this discussion or discourse is to provide neutral space for dialogue, peer exchange, and learning on CSA across Southern Africa. What it means is we are present in all the 16 SADC member states, and we work through our focal points in those countries. And also another core role is we align and harmonize climate change and agricultural programs at multi scales, right? And we also support coherent national policy frameworks such as NAPS, NDCs, and NAPS with shared evidence. Then we also connect members to financing opportunities and partnerships to accelerate implementation. Then we do have some frameworks for decisions around productivity and incomes, adaptation and resilience, mitigation when possible. Then SACSA within the CADESA's CSA architecture. We strengthen CADESA's CSA Connect Africa agenda by turning regional coordination into country-ready action and investable pipelines. Our shared mandate within the CADESA architecture, scale climate smart agriculture through regional cooperation and country implementation, strengthen evidence learning and partnerships that unlock investments, provide practical support to national CSA planning, delivery systems, and monitoring. Then SACSA value added to CADESA. One, multi-stakeholder CSA alliance, learning evidence synthesis, and policy dialogue, turns regional lessons into country-ready tools, that is for planning and delivery and monitoring. We connect implementers, that is farmer, private sector actors, and financing conversations. What we are advancing together, that is SACSA, CADESA, and FANAPAN. A clearer offer from regional platforms to countries. This is a menu for support plus rapid response. Evidence that travels. I think Prof talked about cross-border issues, right? Or transboundary issues. So this is what we are also trying to address together with CADESA, FANAPAN. Then we also, we have got a joint pipeline that is bankable CSA concepts aligned to the CADAP 2026 to 2035 international plans. Distinctive value of SACSA to countries. Value proposition, number one, we convene and coordinate. Neutral platform across government, research, CSOs, and private sector. Reduces fragmentation and duplication across CSA initiatives. Two, evidence policy instruments. Translates evidence into country planning cycles. Supports coherent CSA priorities within NAPS, NDCs, and NAPS. Regional learning and harmonization. Peer learning on what works in similar ecologies and markets. Encourages shared indicators and scalable delivery models. Matchmaking for implementation. Connects members to partners and finance windows. From knowledge sharing toward implementation support. Challenges. On challenges. Evidence often flows from regional to national level, but implementation experiences and local data do not consistently flow back to refine regional research agendas. Fragmented data ecosystems, agriculture, climate finance, and disaster risk data remain siloed, limiting integrated decision making. There remains a persistent evidence to action gap. While our regional climate models are robust, they often lack the granular, localized resolution needed for a national extension officer to make a daily recommendation to a smallholder farmer. there is limited translation into bankable investments. Research outputs are not always packed into investment-ready proposals that ministries of finance and development banks can fund. Then two practical shifts to strengthen regional and national alignment. Number one, package decision-ready CSA evidence. A regional CSA evidence build are aligned to cut up knowledge management priorities, core indicators plus risk layers plus menu of costed CSA options that planners can use. Build an investable pipeline is number two, that is financing readiness. Standard screen for CSA investments, adaptation, productivity, mitigation where possible. Monitoring MRV, safeguards plus delivery models plus easier blending of public, climate, and private finance. Number three, we should move from knowledge sharing implementation to implementation support, which means targeted technical assistance and communities of practice for delivery systems. Learning loops that update national plans and investment cases as evidence improves. Shift number two, institutionalized two-way learning mechanism. That's what we are actually also proposing. Establish structured regional, national review platforms where countries report implementation bottlenecks. I think it was alluded to in the morning. Regional bodies adjust research priorities. Lessons are rapidly shared across member states. This transforms coordination into adaptive governance rather than one directional dimension. Allow me to digress a bit. There are two issues that we always often forget and maybe say we don't talk about it. But today, I'm going to talk about it, and it's up to the delegates to think about it, but I'm going to mention it because these are two cross-cutting themes that are very important to us as farmers. Number one is the mental health aspect of it. As we discuss this technical activity, by integrating mental health support into our agricultural frameworks, we acknowledge that the farmer is the most critical piece of infrastructure in the value chain. Resilience is not just about the soil. It is about the soil and the mind of those who till it.
And Justice, if you could summarize some of your leftover points. It's a lot of nice content there.
Our call to action as Southern Africa Climate Smart Agriculture Alliance, therefore, we are just looking at, this is it's a threefold call to action. Number one, to government officials here present, we encourage government officials and partners here present to integrate regional and national evidence into investment plans, use the data that is created to justify budget allocations for climate resilience. To development partners, you should sustain the funding for regional knowledge platforms, evidence generation, not a one-off activity. It requires long-term commitment to remain relevant to all stakeholders here present. Strengthen the feedback loops. Let us ensure that the voices of smallholder farmers, who are the primary actors in the CSA, are reflected in the evidence we present. Let us leave this session with a renewed commitment to align our regional evidence with national action. Let us turn knowledge into investment and investment into impact. Thank you for your attention. I look forward to a fruitful discussion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. That was a lot of rich content. I really appreciate the time that it has taken and effort to synthesize for us all this information, which is extremely useful for our conversation. I just want to check. I think the batteries are gone with that. I just want to check. We've heard from Justice Zwaita talking about SACSA, the Southern Africa platform for CSA. And we've also had at least 2 or 3 platforms also in the Eastern Africa side that bring together practitioners, do very many different things. They listed them. And I just want to check from those who are here, especially the countries, if you're here and you have interacted or are a part of any of these CSA platform, if you could just show me by hand. Anybody who's a member or participates or knows about somehow these CSA platforms. One, I see one person. Anybody else? If you're hearing about them for the first time, these regional CSA platforms, also show me your hand. If this is the first time you're hearing about this stuff, you're like, what are these people talking about? Okay, I see more hands. Okay, so this is interesting to me because we need to interrogate how useful and relevant these CSA platforms are, but also how we can make them more useful and relevant for our countries. Now, to the person that knows about them, if I could, who has the microphone? Please, can you help me with the microphone cube, our assistants? I would like to ask you to just say your own opinion, very honestly. We're going to have a very honest conversation here. Are these platforms useful? What are they? What do you know about them that's, you could say, well, they helped us with this at the national level? Someone's hand was there. I believe it's a lady from, is it Malawi or?
Yes.
Yes, it seems to be working.
Yeah. So, yes, I'm from Malawi.
Yes, go ahead.
Maybe I fit in your second question because when you asked about knowing about the platforms, that's when I raised my hand.
Okay.
Because we belong to the continent wide. We used to call it the Africa Climate Smart Alliance. And we at national level also had our own alliance. But of course, to have the regional hub, so to speak, is something that I'm getting here. So like I raised at the beginning, I should have raised
Yes.
this.
So
But
there's-
in any case,
Yes.
I think they are very good platforms. We've had our own in Malawi. The only problem is we were relying on support from a project. And when it came to an end, it also affected our own activities. But we had made progress. And currently we're also working to kind of resuscitate so that we continue with our work. Yes, so they are good platforms. You bring stakeholders together. In fact, we had advanced to a level where we had a national platform and then we had sub-regional platforms where we said they should be meeting on a regular basis, and then we can have probably an AGM of some sort where then we get reports from the regional offices, and then we plan together and then we proceed.
Yeah.
So we have partners, the NGOs, civil society, that are actually leading the regional platforms.
Yeah.
And at the national level, our ministry, working with other MDAs, we are collaborating together to bring this platform to work. But we have had support from civil society. We have a civil society network on agriculture. We call it CISANET in Malawi. We got funding from Irish Aid. They were supporting us. They were channeling the funding from that CSO, and that's why we were able to meet. We also had support from FAO. We had the regional project, and they're also supporting us. So we used to meet on a regular basis, but since the project closed, but we're trying to see how we can have our own resources from our own government budget, which is limited, but we want to see how.
Yeah, so let me just ask you a question right there. You say that they're useful and you think that the Malawi could benefit. What's the one thing you think would be most useful if these CS regional platforms were to be helpful for Malawi's situation with your climate smart agriculture? What's that one service they could offer?
Yeah, so learning from our experience, we really wanted to start with making sure that we have a solid foundation going forward, in the sense that we kind of mobilize ourselves in country, and then we can learn from what the regional hub can support us with,
Yeah.
and then we engage them.
So more of learning what others are doing so that you
Yes.
could share that within Malawi,
Yes.
but also share what you're doing with others. So it's more of a knowledge management and learning platform as well.
Yes, it is,
Okay.
because also when when you interact, there's an opportunity to visit
Yeah.
our farmers, and we kind of take those technologies and adapt them in country. Currently, we have a number of technologies we've learned in the region. We're implementing them, and they're working very well.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, I got the sense that very few of us are aware or even part of this regional platform. So I want to come back to you guys because I was expecting, like, most of the countries would say, well, we in Djibouti and in Somalia and wherever, we know about these platforms that Oliver is talking about, and we are part of it. So, Oliver, I'll start by asking you just very briefly, if you could just take like 30 seconds to give me a sense of how many countries are really part of the platforms you mentioned. I know you talked about one that's really about food security, and then there was the other one, which is the Greater Horn of Africa platform. What's the membership like?
Thank you. So I mentioned about two platforms. So the first one is food security. Let me start with the Greater Horn of Africa Climate Outlook Forum. So this is for all the countries in the Greater Horn of Africa region. So that's comprising 10, 11 countries in the region. And we have representation from all these countries.
Okay.
And these are actually forums or platforms that has forums 3 times a year for the March, April, May agricultural season. Then there is the June to September for the northern, and then October to December season. So we have 3 forums. If you go to what we produce from such forum is what we call a summary for decision makers, cutting across all sectors, including agriculture, and also a statement.
Like a policy brief.
Yes.
Of some sort.
Yeah.
What about the other forum? How many countries?
The other one is a food security nutrition working group, which is actually comprising around over 70 institutions.
70 institutions.
Yes,
So it's not
covering
country membership.
national, there is regional institution, there is UN institutions, all coming together every month to actually, so we have sub-working groups, like we have markets, we have climate, we have livestock, conflict, all that coming, because we all know that all these are drivers of food insecurity in the region.
Absolutely.
And a summary statement for that. And even a regional crisis report, which is actually produced once every year, which is, as I said, a reference point for food security in the IGAD region. There is the regional chapter and also national chapter, like my colleague talked about from Zambia. There is also, in the same as GACOF, we also have NCOF, going all the way up to subnational
Okay.
level. So
All right. That gives me a good sense. While you still have the microphone, before I go to Justice, the good lady from Malawi said that one thing she'd appreciate is learning what's happening in other countries, how successful or not another country is in implementing something that's relevant for CSA, and so on. So I'm curious, what have you found to be the most useful types of evidence or information that when shared at a regional level makes sense? Because they're unique things. We are in Ethiopia, there are some things that are really unique to Ethiopia that even if you came and told us in Uganda or in Malawi may not work, but there may be things that make sense. So if you could just take a minute to tell us the sorts of things that you have seen appeal more broadly at a regional level, maybe because of their regionality in terms of their nature or some other reason.
Thank you very much. So I will give an example of a project that we implemented in Ethiopia, Kenya, and Uganda. And so actually there was a lot of learning. So actually, and it was a pilot in some small communities. And we found that one of the challenges that we have with the projects and pilots is actually financing. And you see, it needs like dedicated time for people to be part of that initiative and run that initiative, but all giving CSA solutions. But we found that actually digital solutions can be a bridge or a solution to all this. And as a result of that, we have actually, as a region, as an IGAD region, invested in digital solutions. Like we have systems that can, so utilizing data, we have Earth observation data, remote sensing data, meteorological data, even impact and socioeconomic data. We have developed actually some of the decision support tools for countries all the way up to subnational as a way to bridge these pilots. So these systems, digital systems that we have developed is actually like, for example, monitoring croplands in near real time. So you can have this information in near real time, and it can actually be a layer of information that extension actors in our member states or in our countries can use as part of enhancing the advisory services they give to the last mile farmers.
Okay. No, that's a good point. You know, just taking advantage of digital tools to make available all the lessons and information makes it much easier across countries. I'm sure this is also your experience in Southern Africa. But I want to come back to you also and get a real sense. She's from Malawi, so that's actually Southern Africa. And just like I was telling him earlier, not many countries, we have, I think we have Comoros here, we have some other countries from Southern Africa, and at least the ones here didn't seem to know about SACSA or be part of it. So again, I'm curious. It's maybe a small challenge to get from you a sense of what's the membership like. But also tell us a little bit more, very briefly, if you don't mind, Justice. Just an example of one successful lesson or product that you think you can share with us that was produced and packaged and spread across the region. Just one practical example of something like that.
Thank you. To begin with, I think from the members who are here, right, Zambia, Malawi,
Yes.
we do have the alliances there. The unfortunate part is the engagement of our focal points with the ministries. This is something that I have been talking to the honorable from Zambia to say, I think there's that missing gap. In other countries, we are still trying to engage so that these focal points, you know, because our mandate is to complement government efforts, right? So in that complementary role, right, we should actually ensure that we work with the relevant ministries that guides our operations, right? So in terms of the activities, I think Comoros also, we do have members, right? So from the support that we actually got from CADESA, we did a mapping strategy in other countries that we didn't have the alliances. I'll give you an example. There's Comoros, there's Angola, there's Mauritius. We didn't have, but we got support, and we actually identified focal points in those countries. And what is actually happening at the moment as we speak? Last time we were in Lesotho, where we actually had a discussion through a funded project that was supported by CADESA as well, where we actually had to discuss gender-related issues, climate change and gender-related issues. What came out there in that discussion was like women farmers, normally, they were actually complaining to say, one, the policy that are related to lean tenure, they favor men as compared to women. So that was one other issue that actually came out of that meeting. Then the other issue that came out strongly was the traditional ecological knowledge, which has been ignored. And we are actually, we're not talking about it in any platform. So what they were then saying or clamoring for was to say, one, we need to go back to the issues where farmers themselves, us as farmers, we need to save our own seeds, number one. We need to exchange our own seeds, traditional seeds, not these patented seeds. So that was one of, the most important issue that also came out of that particular meeting that we had. Then the other issue that actually was discussed was around, contour plowing, you know it, right? Where we used to have contour ridges yesteryear. But this time around, we are not. Why? Because we are saying we can't manage to do, is it contour plowing or contour ridges in our farms? Because it's time consuming. But those are some of the issues that came out through that discussion. So, from the countries that we actually visited, it's unfortunate to say we do have some government officials who are saying they don't know the platform, but I know we have got a lot of information that we developed that we can even share with the government ministries or officials who are actually present here to prove that this is what we have been doing. But the unfortunate part is the engagement aspect of it with the relevant ministries within those countries. I think that's something that we actually need to improve. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Interesting all round. My questions were really geared at trying to see what's the value of these platforms. And now I'm curious also, how can we strengthen the regional, national linkage so that what's happening at regional level seeps down to the country level, and what's happening at country level goes back up to the region. In a few minutes, I'm going to invite Dr. Manyeu to also share with us his thoughts as he listens to this conversation. But I want to see if any one of you listening, for the past so many minutes, has any input in terms of suggestions on how we can strengthen this regional platform so that they are relevant, they are useful, they are strong, because it seems we have a sense that we need to strengthen them. But how? Anyone wants to contribute, you will have a chance right now before I come to Dr. Manyeu for his comments. And I'm also quite happy to take any comments from people who think that these things are not useful, we should stop them. That's also a comment I would like to hear, especially if you're going to tell me why. Anyone who has any idea for them, these platforms, these regional platforms to be strengthened? I see 2 hands up. I'll give up to 3 if I see a third hand. Where are the guys with the microphones? Oh, I see. So can we start with the gentleman there, and then we come to this table, our colleague from Comoros.
Thank you so much. Frank Agoda is my name, from Uganda. What I know about regional platform is that they are hard to manage, but we can use 2 strategies. The first one is to have leaders for each platform who are known, so that if anything goes wrong, they are answerable, and we can use them to follow up. The second one is to use the available digital system. We have social media, which we can utilize so that within this conference, we can begin from there. We register ourselves, we give to the leaders who will be elected, and then we start it from there. Let's utilize the available resources in terms of the social media. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Very good points right there. Strengthen the leadership. Make sure the leadership is strong, stable, collaborative, but also use the tools. And I know one of you had mentioned digital tools, so social media and all these tools to spread information. Yes, sir.
Je vais parler un peu en français. Donc, en
Yes,
fait,
this is French. If
quand
just
le,
hold on a moment, I want to make sure everyone giving you 30 seconds if you need to put your
non,
headphones on.
je veux dire, la question posée par le facilitateur, c'est comment enrichir par rapport à ce qui était exposé ici. La première des choses, c'est la vulgarisation de ces plateformes. Parce que, comme vous avez remarqué ici, beaucoup de gens ne les connaissaient pas, comme vous l'avez vu dans la salle. Mais également, comme l'avait dit notre donneur intervenant, il a montré que même nos décideurs politiques ne les connaissent même pas quand ils ont fait la visite dans différents pays. Donc, je pense que c'est très nécessaire de trouver les moyens permettant de vulgariser ça. Je parle des cas de Comores. Aujourd'hui, c'est l'un des grands chantiers sur lesquels plusieurs partenaires essaient d'appuyer le pays, de mettre en place des plateformes permettant vraiment de faciliter les agriculteurs d'accéder à l'information en vue de favoriser les nouvelles technologies liées à l'agriculture climato-intelligente. Donc, je pense qu'il faudra vulgariser davantage et surtout aussi attirer beaucoup de pays à adhérer à ces différentes plateformes en vue vraiment de pouvoir vraiment mettre en place cette agriculture climato-intelligente. Merci.
Thank you so much. Well appreciated those comments. Thank you. So I want to come to you, Dr. Manyehu. Or before you, I think I had one more hand. Yes, the lady down there.
Je parle en français, hein, French.
Français.
Oui. Bonjour, plutôt bonsoir. Moi, je m'appelle Adala, je suis du ministère de l'Agriculture de Djibouti. Je voulais faire un petit commentaire par rapport à la plateforme, l'intérêt, l'avantage des plateformes. Je dirais qu'il y a un avantage et un inconvénient d'avoir une plateforme. Je suis beaucoup plus pour l'avantage, hein, mais pour une plateforme régionale, hein, ça peut être vraiment très, très importante dans les cas de transfrontaliers. Parce que je prends un exemple, parce que nous, on fait partie du pays des Légades. Donc, il y a problème de ravageurs, bien sûr. Et s'il y a la collecte, l'alimentation de données dans la plateforme, on peut vraiment penser à une prévention. Donc, je pense que pour qu'une plateforme soit vraiment efficace, il faut qu'il y ait l'alimentation de données. Il faut qu'il y ait la collecte de données de chaque État membre. Donc, s'il y a la collecte de données, donc il peut y avoir des partages. C'est bien d'avoir une plateforme parce que chaque pays, en étant dans son pays, il peut voir un peu ce qui se passe dans les pays voisins et comme ça penser à faire une lutte beaucoup plus, par exemple, la lutte contre les ravageurs. Donc, je pense que c'est très, très important d'avoir une plateforme, mais dans les cas où une plateforme n'est pas alimentée, n'est pas efficace, je ne vois pas un peu l'intérêt d'avoir une plateforme. Mais avoir une plateforme régionale en soi, c'est vraiment très, très important. Parce que également aussi, ça peut être un moyen de prévention dans les cas, par exemple, d'une plateforme d'agroclimat, des données agroclimatologiques. Donc voilà, les États membres peuvent en amont avoir, comme ça, peuvent lutter contre un aléa ou bien un risque climatique. Le fait d'avoir un peu ce qui se passe, le fait d'avoir un peu tous les paramètres concernant l'agroclimat, ça peut prouver un peu prévenir et lutter contre un aléa tel que la sécheresse ou bien la pluviométrie, la manque de la rareté de l'eau ou bien la qualité du sol. Il y a tous ces paramètres qu'on peut prendre en considération. Donc, je pense qu'une plateforme régionale efficace et efficiente serait vraiment très, très importante. Merci.
Yes, thank you so much for emphasizing the need and importance of these platforms for various things that you've mentioned. So thanks once again for that. I'd like to come back to the panel and specifically to you, Dr. Manyeu. You've been listening to this conversation, and I just want to hear your thoughts at this point about these regional CSA platforms and what's coming to you from the discussion so far.
Thanks, Robert, for the invitation to this panel. As I was listening, I was just thinking. The word platform in itself, I think, can be interpreted differently. Just hearing from the different contributions that came through, I think they take different forms. They use different media. And also it is clear that they are for different purposes. Just from what has been discussed already, to me, I don't think the question is whether we need them or not. For me, I think that question is already answered because regardless of what you call them, people need to connect in one way or the other. For different purposes, we have WhatsApp groups, we have different ways of people connecting almost spontaneously. So it's human nature to want to connect and to want to exchange information. It is human nature. So for me, I think for the work that we concern ourselves with, I don't think the question is whether we need them or not, because naturally human beings will drift in that direction. So I want to just reflect a bit more around, what I'm hearing just from this conversation with respect to, how useful the platforms have been at different levels. At regional level, of course, what I'm hearing is they are being used for different purposes. There are some that are more specialized, and listening from some of the comments coming from the audience, my take is that the more specialized, more focused platforms tend to get a lot more recognition. They tend to get a lot more participation. That's my feeling. To the extent that I think if we are to to really strengthen our platforms, those are the elements that need to be clear. The purpose, the legitimacy as well, including the leadership essentially around how those platforms are actually put together. So I think those are important considerations. To the extent that for me, these are instruments that require a level of institutionalization if they are to get the legitimacy and the kind of formalization, because you could hear in the audience, some people were not aware of some of these platforms, even if they exist in one form or the other, but there's no almost maybe acceptable institutionalization of some of them. They almost sound to me like many of them remain at an informal level, to the extent that there's no way of them being known as widely as you would expect. I was listening and I started to, I wish I was sitting next to Prof. Dlamini. I was actually going to ask him to say, does this sound like a channel for scaling out or scaling up? What do you or scaling because for me, when I was listening, I also felt that this is a way of almost an organic way of the different modalities of scaling, because people share information, investments in solutions in one part of the continent actually inform beyond the immediate areas where that investment is actually happening. I had a lot about the early warning function of these kinds of platforms. So there's no doubt that there is a purpose, there is a strong argument for, for this kind of approach, including regional cooperation, which is really important because there are issues that cannot be solved at national level alone or even at regional level. Sometimes it needs to be escalated across regions. So there is definitely a purpose for this. For me, I guess the question is, how do you formulate these in a way that make them, more recognized by key players? How do you ensure the communication around them is also solid, robust, and trusted?
Yeah.
I see also a lot of enablers, the digital systems that are essentially making perhaps many of these platforms more user-friendly, more acceptable, more accessible, to the people that need them. So to the extent that I think going forward, we have such tools to strengthen how these platforms work. But I guess there are a few things that we need to work at if they are to be effective. My last point, I think, would really be around. I'm hearing a lot of platforms. I'm hearing, many platforms. I'm also hearing funding issues in terms of the sustenance of these platforms. And I'm asking to say, do we really need so many of them? Is there a logical way of really bringing them together to the extent that, one sort of pipeline could actually be fed for different purposes, rather than I'm forming my own platform, he's forming his own, he's starting his own, and we have our audience. Is there a way of really, agreeing on a few key sort of backbone type platforms that will carry many messages? So those are the things that came to my mind just listening to this conversation.
Yeah.
And also thinking in terms of as the continent, I heard Gertrude from Malawi also mentioning the Africa Climate Smart Alliance, which is a continental alliance, a platform essentially, which also aims to actually undertake a lot of these functions, but the similar issues, funding, sustaining this, and remains something we need to deal with. But let me stop there.
Yeah, and thank you so much. I really appreciate, couldn't have put it better, your summary of some of the key issues that have come from this conversation. I'm sure Oliver and Justice would agree. These are pertinent and important issues that we all need to discuss and agree upon. And, the purpose of our meeting is really to get to the issues and make very solid recommendations around some of the things that we have brought up, the clarity of purpose and vision, the clarity of products, what is it we are producing that's appealing to countries, relevant at regional level, the tools that we are using, building them as strong institutions with good, solid leadership, making sure they are sustainable from a financial perspective, but also from a focus and rationale perspective. So all of these points make sense to me, and I think we have surfaced them in a good way. And so now I think I'm out of time, but I just want to check from the countries that are here. Having heard all of this, how many of you are now interested in getting involved with these platforms and being part of a process to make them better and to serve our needs? If you're from a country. So I see we got a few more hands. This is kind of like, in church, if you go to church where the preachers finish, then they ask, how many of you are touched by the message? No, I saw many countries, hands up, which means this conversation has been useful, right? So I think I might have 30 seconds each for you, Justice and Oliver. Your last parting shot before we close this.
Thank you. So we are in a digital era, and I think we need to embrace technology as a way of scaling up some of the good practices that has been done. So technology, digital systems actually as a way or a solution to actually bridge the gap of reaching all the farmers in our region. And we need to undertake more of cost-benefit analysis on investment in some of these CSA, early warning, climate information systems, all these all in contributing to CSA as a way of unlocking potential and also financial resources from adaptation actors so that we can enhance the resilience of our smallholder farmers in the Greater Horn of Africa region.
Okay.
Thank you so much. In fact, in my introduction, I forgot to state that Southern Africa Climate Smart Agriculture was born out of the African Union Climate Smart Agriculture Alliance, which was actually led by NEPAD. And this was as a result of the Global Climate Smart Agriculture Alliance that was founded in 2014 in Paris, where we actually had the discussion around CSA. So Southern Africa Climate Smart Agriculture Alliance is not a new alliance. It's a member of the African Union Climate Smart Agriculture Alliance. I want to put this on record. And from here, I've actually gotten some of the comments. I go back and I will report to the team and see how we can improve. One, in terms of engagement with the government officials, which is key. And also I want to thank our Honorable Minister from Comoros as well, who said we are welcome. And I think from here we need to take note of, his details, and then we start engaging at that level and see how we can develop our climate smart agriculture related issues together with our government officials, government line ministries. As I said, we are not actually working in isolation. We complement government efforts in trying to address certain issues. We proffer solutions, and sometimes we proffer policy alternatives. So as a network, we are here to work with the government line ministries and development partners here present to advance the aspirations of the smallholder farmers. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let's give this panel a very big clap. Thank you so much for your input, and I'll invite you back to the audience. We've come to the end of that session. We've actually just run out of time, so I truncated some things. But it was still extremely useful as far as I'm concerned in terms of understanding some of the challenges we are facing and the utility of these platforms. We are due for a short break, very short one. And so we'll take that short coffee break. I'll call it a coffee and stretching break because we had lunch not long ago, so we need to stretch a little bit. So before we have the break, can I ask everyone to stand up just for a minute, and I'll make you stretch as you go for your coffee break. So get some space, hold your hands. So first, do this, breathe in deeply, then out. Oh, relax yourself. Breathe in again, out. Okay, so I want us to use our hands to spell the word CSA, okay? Like this, so C would be like that. Okay, so let's start with C. C. S, nice round S. Some people are spelling other things. But anyway, it's still okay, as long as you're stretching. Now, A. Full stop. Okay, let's be back at 4. We've got just 15 minutes. So if you need to go to the bathroom, grab a cup of coffee, and then maybe even pass by the marketplace if you have time. But let's be back at 4 p.m. We have one last session, and it's a short one.
Good afternoon, colleagues. We're going to get started with our final session for today. Welcome back from break. We've spent much of today talking about alignment across frameworks, across institutions, and across planning processes. This session will have us shift again, this time toward innovation and scaling mechanisms. Because even when policies align, we know that scaling does not happen automatically. In this session, we will use the New Zealand experience through the lens of Dr. Manyewu Mutamba, we're inviting him back, as a systems case, not as a template to copy, but rather as a learning anchor. We heard some this morning from the ambassador of New Zealand about their experience. We'll be hearing more specifics from Dr. Manyewu shortly. We will then layer onto that an R&D and innovation systems lens with the help of Dr. Gert Jan Stads, helping us examine what this means in terms of investment levels, cross-country collaboration, innovation metrics, and private sector investment. The question that I ask you all to keep in mind is what institutional R&D and partnership shifts are required to adapt relevant elements in African contexts and make them work at scale. All right, let us begin. I would now like to invite Dr. Manyewu Mutamba back to the stage. He is, as you've heard, from Auda Nepad, and he will be sharing reflections from the New Zealand study tour, which he participated in, and he will be focusing on system-level dimensions that enabled innovation to scale. Dr. Manyewu, you are welcome again.
Yeah, so I thought I should get this because if I stand in one position, maybe I might end up sleeping. So I thought maybe I should move around. So I wanted to check before I get started. I wanted to check who else was on. I'm just looking around in the crowd. Who else was on the tour to New Zealand at the end of last year? Just checking to see if I'm the only one. It looks like I'm, oh yes, now at least there's someone, there's someone who can also help me to tell this story because I think it's a story that's really worth telling for our continent, the experience, some of the lessons as well that we came across in New Zealand at the end of last year. But before I get there, I want to check in different countries on our continent. I see Malawi, I see Zambia. I just want to check, in your countries, how much does the private sector or resources from the private sector, how much do they contribute to R&D, to research, especially if you think of support for national research institutes, Yozari and others, how much resources, how much finance comes from private sector through different models? Please go ahead, just jump in and go ahead. You can borrow mine if you can't find another one.
I'm not sure I got your question well, but what I want to say is the private sector will only put money when they know that they'll make a profit out of it. And as we speak in our country, the seed industry is purely in the private sector. Now, when I say the seed industry, it's for corn or for maize. Because on hybrid maize, the private sector is making money. So they have invested heavily. And as we speak, we have a surplus export. In the sub-Saharan region, I think we're about the biggest exporter of maize seed to the whole region. We still have challenges with soybeans. We still have challenges with groundnuts. Basically, legume is not very developed, largely because the seed is recycled. So yes, the private sector has a reason to support R&D in corn. The other sector that has been taken up so strongly is sugarcane. Sugarcane is purely in the private sector for a very long time. We don't even provide extension service delivery there. So we have a very strong outgrower scheme in one of our provinces where everything happens within there, from production, research, soil management, and for your own information, they do monocropping year in, year out, but they manage the soil. There's issues of soil health. So they have invested heavily in an outgrower scheme. What comes out of that outgrower scheme is processed sugar, and sugar is exported. So I think the point here is the private sector will invest or will put their money if they can realize a profit. If they can't, they wouldn't. It'll be very difficult.
I think I should just let Louis make this presentation and I can go on. Thank you so much, Louis, for those inputs. And I think the message is that there are ways of private sector contributing to actually funding research in our countries. The modalities on how that is happening is different depending on where you are, which is okay. I'm going to share the experience that we had with the New Zealand research and development innovation ecosystem in terms of how they organize themselves, particularly with respect to how they've managed to commercialize research, how they've managed to get into arrangements that essentially sustain the research ecosystem, the innovation ecosystem, without, solely depending on government funding alone. That is the big lesson that we learned in New Zealand, that it is possible for private sector, especially to actually cooperate with governments to fund research and innovation in a way that makes that research and innovation ecosystem very effective, very results-oriented, like Louis has actually also highlighted. It has to actually make sense for the private sector to get involved. We were invited and hosted by the Bioeconomy Science Institute of New Zealand with support from the World Bank. There were participants, of course, from AD, NEPAD, myself, from CADESA, leaders of African research institutions as well that were part of the delegation that went to New Zealand, also to be able to see for themselves in terms of what is happening in that part of the world. You see some of them on that nice picture at the top. Unfortunately, I was the cameraman, so I couldn't. I'm not on record, but yes, that is the team that went to New Zealand. So, as I mentioned, the focus was really around commercialization of research. And one of, some people might actually want to ask, so, but why do you want to commercialize research? Shouldn't this be public goods that government should, supply anyways? And the reality is, in many of our countries, government is the real burden, or them, they essentially support most of the research and innovation that happens in our countries. But the question is always, is it a sustainable model? Are governments able to handle that burden, to the level that still delivers quality research that responds to the needs of farmers, of agribusiness and others? And, is that ecosystem able to attract high caliber personnel that can really, do the business? Is it responding to, to market needs? And also in terms of benefit sharing, is it, the most optimal model with respect to to sharing, the benefits. And the question as well in terms of research is supposed to have products, it's supposed to have services that actually serve, the community, the farmers, the agribusiness. Is that happening? Are you creating business opportunities for value chain players in the country? So essentially, the argument around commercialization is to say, when you get, participation of the commercial sector, you can actually enhance, the function of research and innovation in the country across almost all of these elements. And our visit to New Zealand actually proved that a well-functioning research and innovation ecosystem can deliver on almost all of these with strong participation of private sector using different models that I will share with you very briefly. Before I go to that, I was checking with the CAADP Kampala Strategy and Action Plan. The word research is mentioned 66 times. Innovation, I think, almost 20 times. Close to 100, words that refer to research or innovation or something similar. To the extent that it is very clear that the CAADP Kampala agenda needs to be driven by solid, robust research and innovation ecosystems in our countries. And how do we actually deliver that? In many countries of this continent, I think we actually have some work to do. And this visit was essentially, ignited by the fact that we see that there are gaps that we need to deal with in our countries. And perhaps this is a pathway to actually deliver in terms of having robust research that contributes in some of these ways that we have highlighted. So I want to share some of the the models for commercializing research that we came across in the New Zealand ecosystem. I should mention that there's many of them. I will probably just highlight a few, depending on the circumstances, the context. They have been able to determine the most applicable approach, the most applicable model. They shared with us some of those models that have worked, and that essentially continue to deliver for the systems that they are working with. This is a quick summary just to show you the Bioeconomy Science Institute that we visited. This is just a breakdown of their revenue each year in terms of the contribution that come from different places. As you can see at the bottom, the biggest chunk is actually coming from the commercial sector through different kinds of partnerships that they have with the private sector, whether it's joint ventures, whether it's equity ownership in different businesses that actually use their products, or it's actually wholly owned companies that they actually have that generate that value. You also see a big chunk of revenue coming from royalties. Essentially, these are payments that are made because the research institute itself holds, intellectual property rights to whether it's varieties, whether it's tools, whether it's protocols, different products that are a part of their research function, is protected by intellectual property rights, in New Zealand. And anyone who wants to access that has to pay, royalties. That is structured in different ways. So you will see the strategic finance, which is really a small proportion there, which is the 139 million, is the funding that they receive from government. Remember, this is a public institution. This is essentially a fully, owned by government. It's a public institution, but that's the only amount, the only proportion that comes from, from government. So essentially, almost 70% of their revenue comes from other sources other than government, and a big chunk of it coming from the commercial sector. So that's a clear distinction to what you would see if you go to many of our public research institutes on the continent. in terms of what they're actually commercializing, it is different things. As I said, it's intellectual property rights that they hold, whether it's plant varieties that are high performing, that farmers want access to, that private agribusiness want access to, whether it's just new products, maybe it's bio pesticides that they've developed and patented, that they've, intellectual property, and anyone who is accessing and commercializing it actually needs to, pay for either through a license or royalty. It could even be other innovations. It could be tools, equipment, protocols for doing different things that they actually hold, IP for, that they are able to commercialize through different models. So in terms of their commercialization models, as I said, it comes in different forms. Essentially, it's almost like a horses for courses kind of situation. So for every situation, they determine the appropriate form of commercialization that they actually go with. They have an entire department for the institute that deals specifically with commercialization. They have a commercialization manager. Almost every research institute that you go to, they have a commercialization manager. So this is not accidental. This is deliberate. This is planned, and it's essentially a system that is planned to work in that fashion. So as I said, they go into joint ventures, sometimes with startups. For example, they once they produce something that is high potential, they start a joint venture with a startup. This is one place where I came across people that actually work themselves out of a job. They actually do that because we actually had examples of people that were working for the research institute that came across a great idea, and it was patented, the intellectual property, and they felt it is a compelling enough case to actually start a business venture. They left their job, they started a business venture, some of it independent from the research institute, but the research institute also is allowed by the legal statutes in the country to actually be able to go into partnerships with such businesses. So they actually hold equity sometimes in existing businesses, because the existing business actually wants access to the IP that the research institute holds. Sometimes they actually just license, for example, growers of a crop variety that they are developing. They license growers. So if I want access, I've just put an example there of the kiwi fruit, which is one of their, I think they are very proud of what they've done with the kiwi fruit. It's almost like their national flagship, and they've done a lot of research there, and they have a very interesting model with respect to how the research around the kiwi fruit is happening. They have a partnership with a private sector company called Zespri. Essentially, Zespri sells kiwi fruit across the world. They make a lot of money, but they pay royalty to the Bioeconomy Science Institute because they hold the IP for the genetics that is actually going to the kiwi fruit breeding center, which is owned 50-50 between the Bioeconomy Science Institute and Zespri, a private company. So they jointly own that very specialized research institute that focuses on research for the kiwi fruit. You see they even rent land from the institute itself, and you see how the benefits are actually shared. As you were saying, Louis, in terms of there has to be value, they have to see value, and the value is actually in the quality of genetics that they've received from the institute that gives them an edge on the market, and they are almost the biggest exporter of kiwi fruit in the world, and they make a ton of money out of doing that. So they don't mind paying for the IP that allows them to do that. So royalty payments are a big source of funding for the research institutes. And as I said earlier, sometimes they actually essentially hold an entire company that essentially commercializes commercializes IP from their research. This is another example of the berry variety that they developed. It was developed by the institute itself, so they hold the IP for that. And it has gone around the world with similar commercialization model based on growers actually paying a license for accessing the genetics. Some of the royalties are paid based on different rates, sometimes based on the plants. For each plant that you actually get, you pay. Licenses sometimes are based on the amount of acreage that you're actually planting some of the some of their products. So essentially, this is a pipeline for revenue for the institute, for as long as the variety in this case is still performing to market expectation. This is just a timeline in terms of the process, what's involved from a time when trials are actually underway at the research level, all the way to companies actually being formulated to handle different elements, and structuring of the commercial model that is, and you can see even the licenses sometimes even start increasing because of the performance of the genetics, for example, in this case. So they have people that have specialized in packaging the commercialization models that actually work depending on different circumstances. So this particular variety of the berry is now branded as a world-class variety of fruit, commanding huge market share on the world stage. And you can imagine the amount of money the Research Institute gets just collecting licenses for every acre that is planted with this fruit. So these are just a few examples of what we actually came across as we visited the Bioeconomy Science Institute, which has got different institutes as well under them. Essentially, this is almost like the mother institute of different institutes. Some of them are specialized in different areas. Research is also happening at the university levels, and many of the universities are actually following the same model. So we, at the end of the tour, we came across a lot of these examples, and at the end of it, we started looking at what could be some of those models that could work in the African setting, knowing the realities of how things happen. And I guess the main message is that commercialization of research and innovation on the African continent is already happening, perhaps not nearly as much as we'd want. We already had the Zambian case with respect to how it's happening and how it's actually working in some regards. So this would differ from different countries. So in our analysis, we started to say, okay, I think there are some things that could be applicable in the African context, things that are perhaps good enough for us to already start saying, okay, can we look at how we can support some of the institutes to already start transitioning in that direction? Because the reality is, member states, government financing is never going to really take us to the level. I spoke earlier about the central role of research and innovation in delivering CAADP Kampala. So the argument is that if we are to really deliver at the level of ambition of CAADP Kampala, we perhaps need to take things to another level. And we feel this is a way that can actually help us to get there. So for example, the JV approach could essentially work in some of the institutes, but there is a number of things that we need to shift in terms of how we approach our mindset around some of these partnerships and what is legally possible, to the extent that in some places you might need to even look at shifting and realigning the legal and legislative policy systems in those countries for some of these things to work. Partnerships with established agribusiness, it's already happening in different forms, but in terms of really being a sustainable pipeline for financing research and innovation in our countries, we probably need to look at things at a more institutionalized level beyond what we are seeing at this point in time. Catalytic financing arrangements, we came across, this as almost as an enabler for commercialization of some of the research. Early on, joint ventures, for example, require financing, sympathetic financing for them to be able to get to a point where they can get to the market and get more commercial financing. So there is the catalytic funding facility that is actually put in place by government. And I was actually thinking, in the African context, we have quite a bit of development money that has been going to different places. Would that not be a place where some of that money could actually be directed, knowing that it really plays a catalytic function, because once these businesses go over a certain threshold, they are independent. They're able to they're actually able to look after themselves. We also thought this may not be possible for everything, but we think there are some value chains where this is really possible, particularly those that are high value. We had examples, for example, in the case of Zambia, maize, sugarcane. Those are some of the value chains where the players have been able to identify real return on investment in research. So you see things happening there. So there are a number of considerations if we had to really look at how the African ecosystem will be able to will actually be able to learn or borrow from some of these examples. Anyway, so we had to also think, at least from the AED and NEPAD side, in terms of how we could follow up on some of these lessons from New Zealand and the conversations that we had while we were there with leaders from research institutes. And we started to look at some of the next steps that we could look at, including a dialogue with key players on the continent within the research and innovation space to really look at, of course, for us to document some of these lessons and present them to key players within this ecosystem to really start this conversation and look at how we actually come up with a structured way of saying we have cut up Kampala to deliver on. This is the expectation from research. We feel that this is a delivery pathway that could actually put research and innovation on the pathway to being a critical enabler for cut up Kampala. We also are looking at saying if we agree with stakeholders, we'll be happy to coordinate a commercialization working group, essentially that looks at driving, this concept and looking at really, putting together partnerships. We have very strong support from some of the partners listed there, including partners in New Zealand themselves. They are very happy to be able to support us to also look at transforming our own ecosystem. To the extent that, once we agree on some of these steps, working with some of the, research institutes on the continent to really pilot some of, these ideas around commercialization and using those as learning models to also look at how we make this something that can be scaled, whether we're going deep, whether we're going out. I think it is all scaling. So I think these are some of the proposals that we have put on the table in terms of how we can take things forward after the experience we had in New Zealand. So for us, it was very eye-opening, and we feel the continent needs to have this conversation given the level of expectation that is placed on research, and also matching that with what we see currently. We feel there's a lot of work to be done, and these could be some of the elements that we could look at to take things forward. I think I will stop. I'll stop there, and but I'm happy to. Dr. Majola is here. He was also in New Zealand with me and the group. So if I missed some critical learnings from there, he's on hand to jump in and to also add his voice to this. Otherwise, thank you so much for listening and for the opportunity to speak to you.
Thank you, Dr. Mutumba. Thank you, first of all, for affirming the role of robust research in the CADP Kampala agenda, and also for giving us some good ideas for how to build on the commercialization of research that's already happening on the content. I think your presentation was eye-opening and stimulating at the same time. I'd like to invite Dr. Gert Jan Sads from CGIAR to provide an R&D and innovation systems lens for us. You're welcome.
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. It's never easy to be the very last speaker at an event like this because you always run the risk that many of the points that you were going to make were already raised by multiple other speakers. But that also reinforces my belief that what I'm going to say here today is actually relevant and of interest to this audience. So there are my slides. So let me just start with a very simple question, right? So if climate smart agriculture is not scaling across Africa, is that a technology problem or is that a system problem, right? Because if we're honest, I mean, we heard this a lot here today. Many CSA technologies already exist. We have drought-tolerant varieties, we have soil and water management practices, we have multiple digital advisory tools, and yet scaling is somehow uneven and slow across the continent. I think we can all agree on that. And that suggests that the constraint may not be the technologies per se, but really the capacity to scale them, right? Because I think we all agree that CSA is not just a one-off intervention. It's not a project that you just pilot for 3 years and then declare success. It really requires continuous learning and adaptation. It requires multidisciplinary research. It requires sustainable funding. And also, very importantly, it requires close coordination across borders because, as we all know, agroecologies don't stop at national boundaries. And finally, it also really requires strong linkages from research to extension to markets, what we heard the previous speaker say as well. So in other words, CSA is innovation intensive, right, by design. So the question I just wanted to explore today here is whether Africa's agriculture R&D systems are actually structured to deliver that at scale and over time. So are Africa's agriculture R&D systems designed, funded, and governed to deliver sustained system-level innovation? Right, so let me first turn to the investment picture. My slides got a little bit messed up in this template, but my apologies. This is what the investment picture currently looks like, right? So if you look at the graph on the left-hand side, things look quite positive. The long-term trend in agriculture R&D investment is increasing, right? So it has been increasing over time and has been significant progress. So that is a very positive development. But we can also see that the launch of CADP in 2003 really started accelerating agricultural R&D investment. But when you look more closely at the graph on the right-hand side, a different pattern emerges. Spending is highly concentrated in just a handful of countries. If we just look at the top 4 countries, Egypt, Nigeria, Kenya, and South Africa, those 4 countries combined account for half of Africa's agricultural R&D spending. And if you then look at the other end of the spectrum, you see that a lot of countries operate with very, very small research budgets. And in many cases, those research budgets are so low that they really don't allow them, for sustained, diversified research programs. So the issue is not just how much is being spent across the continent, it's how uneven that distribution, that spending distribution is. And this matters enormously for climate smart agriculture, because climate smart agriculture really requires long-term commitments, long-term breeding pipelines. It requires, climate modeling capacity. It requires soil science, water management expertise, livestock research, etc. And also, very importantly, data systems, right? And all that is not something you can just sustain with very, very small, fragmented teams and volatile funding. And also, another important thing I want to stress is that when systems are under-resourced and fragmented, they tend to become reactive, right? So they respond to projects, they respond to donor calls. But what they really should be doing is to really kind of pursue long-term strategic adaptation agendas instead. And that's not happening sufficiently currently in Africa. So even if overall continental spending is on the increase, fragmentation across countries really limits our collective ability to scale climate smart innovation. Right, so then let's look at this from a CAADP lens, right? So as you might all know, CAADP in the previous biannual review cycle, one of their key indicators was, are countries investing 1% of their agricultural GDP on agricultural research? Well, the graph on the left-hand side shows that, in fact, Africa-wide, the intensity ratio, or agricultural research spending as a percentage of agricultural GDP, has actually declined since the year 2000. So in the year 2000, the continent as a whole spent 0.52% of its agricultural GDP on agricultural research. By 2020, it was 0.38%, and the latest data show that it's even lower right now, especially with large donors like USAID having completely cut their funding as well, right? So that's a very negative trend we're seeing there. But now the issue isn't just whether countries meet this 1% benchmark or not, because 1% is it's a nice round number, it sounds good, but it doesn't really mean anything, right? The bigger problem is that a one-size-fits-all indicator tells us actually very, very little about how an R&D system is actually performing. So for example, what we often see is that small island nations or desert countries, they tend to have very, very high intensity ratios, while some of the more developed systems tend to have much lower intensity ratios. Look at India with its world-class research system. Only 0.3% of India's agricultural GDP is spent on agricultural research. China, only 0.5%, right? So my key point here is that one-size-fits-all target is meaningless. So if we focus too narrowly on this single number, we risk overlooking other critical factors, right? So things like the availability of skilled researchers, the resources they have to work with, the stability of funding over time, because we all know that agricultural research is a long-term engagement. And finally, also the ability to generate meaningful research outputs, because you need a critical mass of scientists, of infrastructure to generate those research outputs. And this all matters in particular in the context of climate smart agriculture, because CSA requires, sustained adaptive capacity, long-term breeding programs, climate modeling, soil and water management research, and none of those capabilities show up in a single one-size-fits-all spending ratio that's currently the CAADP standard. So if our actual goal is agri-food transformation, or in this case, particularly climate resilient transformation, then simply tracking spending as the CAADP biannual review process has done to date isn't enough. We really need to look at how research systems actually perform to understand where the real constraints and the opportunities lie. So, yeah, here's the bottom line. So looking at these intensity ratios, as I just said, the classic measure of spending relative to agricultural GDP, it's very, very misleading. And that's why we worked with colleagues from the African Union, from FAO, and from the CIR to develop something more holistic, a little bit more meaningful, right? What we call the Agriculture R&D System Capability Index. And it's by no means a perfect metric, right? Because of data limitations, but the logic is clear that, that strong research systems, they aren't just about money, they're also really about skilled researchers, solid institutions, and enough capacity to generate a critical mass of scientific output, right? And if you look at this chart, the differences are striking. So on the left, you see a ranking using traditional spending intensity ratios like the current CAADP process is using. And what you see is that many of the smaller countries that look like Cape Verde or Lesotho or the Gambia or Eswatini, they appear quite strong when you look at those traditional CAADP indicators. But once we factor in the quality of human capacity and the quality of research outputs, then their ranking really, really drops. And that's what we see in the middle graph here, right? And what we also see in the middle graph is that many of the larger systems like South Africa, Egypt, Ethiopia, Kenya, Nigeria, they score much higher under this NARS capability index than under these traditional spending ratios alone, because they have much broader research programs, they have much stronger institutions, and a lot more infrastructure as well. And that critical mass allows them to produce more and higher quality research, and also engage more effectively with other players across the value chain, including policymakers, extension services, and the private sector, and also on climate smart agricultural solution, right? So the key point I wanted to make here today is that smaller systems don't have the scale to conduct impactful research on their own, right? So therefore, instead of a one-size-fits-all national R&D investment targets as currently under CAADP, it makes more sense to coordinate and plan agricultural research at the regional level using agroecology rather than national borders to guide R&D priorities. So stronger countries in such a model can serve as regional centers of excellence and support the smaller, often lagging systems through things like joint programs, cross-country collaboration, etc. And this is by no means me saying that we should abandon smaller systems, right? Not at all. But it's about designing the right architecture, the regional architecture, built around agroecologies that allow these smaller systems to really kind of plug in into the stronger research hubs, right? And so the bottom line is like clear roles, better coordination and smarter allocation of scarce resources, because those factors, they really maximize impact, reduce duplication, and they really create synergies. So let me just wrap up with what that means for policy. That is my last slide. So, strong research and innovation are absolutely essential. I think we all agree, like they're essential if Africa is going to feed its people and adapt agriculture to climate change. There's no doubt about that. But right now, our research is simply too scattered, right? There are huge differences between countries in size and funding and in capacity, right? So if we want climate smart agriculture to really scale, we need more, cross-country coordination and regional integration, as we've heard many times before today. And here's what I think we need to focus on. So first, we need to increase spending. Africa is definitely underinvesting when it comes to agricultural research. We saw this declining intensity ratio for Africa as a whole, right? So currently, Africa spending less than 0.4% of its agricultural GDP in agricultural research. That's not enough. But we need funding that actually builds strong institutions, that reduces dependency on short donor cycles, and actually aligns with these long-term national and regional priorities. And the private sector could really, really, really do more here, as we heard from the New Zealand example. Like, I thought these were some fantastic examples that many other African countries can replicate as well. Because currently the private sector only accounts for 7% of African agricultural R&D investment. But then if we look at the country breakdown, the bulk of that investment is taking place in just 2 countries, South Africa and Kenya, right? The private sector is a huge untapped source of funding. There's various reasons for that. Governments can help, that there are various barriers to private sector investments. I mean, I think, governments should really put more efforts in helping, making policies that really encourage private investment, but also protect intellectual property and make it easier to bring in technology from abroad. There's simply too many barriers at this case. Now, my second priority action is it's not just about spending more, it's also about spending smarter, right? Because many, as I said many times before, many national systems are just too small to tackle, big, complex problems on their own. And that's why we need these regional approaches around shared agroecologies, in that we can kind of pool expertise and really share infrastructure. And that's how you really generate the critical mass needed for meaningful CSA solutions. I think third, everybody agrees the human capital is key, right? Without investing in the next generation of scientists, think like data science, climate adaptation, new innovation tools, money alone won't translate into results, right? We really need the people who can turn research into real solutions for farmers. Fourth, I think that's a very critical point. We heard it many times today. Research doesn't work in a vacuum. It only delivers when it's connected to policy, to markets, to private sector actors, and to farmers. And too often there is a mismatch, right? Stronger links with other value chain actors across the sector, means that CSA innovations actually get adopted on the ground. Once again, the private sector is really the missing link here. It was very interesting to see this morning when people were asked to stand up and see like how many people are here from the private sector. This is an event about scaling. Very, very, very few private sector representatives. They need to have, a seat on this table as well, right? So I think it's really, really critical. The CGIAR, on the project that's currently led by me, is like developing these new firm identification tools, right? Because like we also realize we've traditionally worked with the usual suspects, right? The public sector research agencies work with the CGIAR or with other universities or other public sector agencies, but partnerships with the private sectors are very, very limited. So what we're doing now, thanks to funding from the Gates Foundation, is to really start mapping these agri-food value chain actors across countries, really mapping all the private players in each country, mapping what they do, what their products are, what their technologies are, what agri-food value chains are involved in. And this is kind of like a matchmaking tool to really kind of better link public sector players with private sector partners, but also private partnerships as well. And I think that's really, really critical and something that can really stimulate private sector involvement going forward. And then finally, I think we all agree, like how we measure performance really matters. If we keep relying on these misleading indicators like that 1% target, for example, under CAADP, we'll never be able to spot the real gaps in the systems, right? So like tools like this NARS capability index that I just presented help us identify where countries actually need support. And I'm working with the AU on better indicators for the Kampala biannual review process. I'll be attending this meeting in Namibia later this month to really kind of flesh out like what are these meaningful indicators we all need to map to really make sure that that countries are turning their research into agri-food transformation. So let me just conclude, like, with the bottom line, like if climate smart agriculture isn't scaling, it's not because the technologies don't exist. I think we all know that. The challenge is that our innovation systems are just misaligned, right? There's fragmented funding, weak private sector engagement, and limited regional coordination, and very few accountability mechanisms. So if we get those pieces working together, then I think Africa can finally turn climate smart solutions into real impact on the ground. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Stads.
I want to appreciate you for not only putting the numbers in front of us, but also giving us a way, a method. Oh, and feel free to sit. Yes, feel free. It's okay. But thank you also for giving us a way to look at the harder to see truth behind the numbers about the hidden capacities that are needed, right, for scaling. So I want to appreciate you for that, as well as for pointing to yet another reason for regional collaboration and for us being here all together today. We've heard a lot of very provocative, very interesting ideas from the New Zealand experience, from what the numbers tell us and don't tell us. Now I want to ask you all here, what did you hear that for you would be catalytic in your country context? And I welcome your contributions. Please raise your hand if you would like to make a comment, and we will ensure you have a microphone. What would be catalytic for you in your context to facilitate scaling? Yes, please. Can we have a microphone over here? I will pass you mine.
Thank you so much. I'd like to thank the speakers who spoke about research and development. But I was to go back to the issue of if we do not address the mental health of a farmer, if we do not integrate the mental health of farmers in our policies, we are not going to achieve climate smart agriculture. We are not going to achieve mitigation. We are not going to achieve adaptation. As farmers, we are traumatized due to losses that we incur in the process. You would find out, sometimes due to droughts, we don't even benefit out of the process. So if a farmer is traumatized, if the mental health of a farmer is not addressed, we can form policies, but we won't go anywhere. Why are we failing? Why are we going in circles? Because there is a silent factor, a silent issue that we need to address, that we haven't been actually honest with each other to say, let's address this issue. The farmer is one of the most important infrastructure that we need if we are to achieve climate smart agriculture. We can do best researches. We can do whatever we want as long as the farmer's mental health is not addressed. As long as the farmer continues in that condition, and we expect to achieve development in the agricultural sector, I think this is going to be a non-starter. We also need to ensure that our researchers need to go further and carry out research into this issue that I'm actually raising, the mental health aspect of a farmer, which is very crucial. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jaita. Other contributions? Yes, please.
Thank you so much. My name is Fred Nyirenda from Malawi. Yeah, I've followed up on the discussion and I've picked on the investment to be smarter, not just the numbers. I think this one can work for Malawi. Just to mention that we need to focus on agricultural transformation, perhaps focus more on sustainability, so that we achieve long-term achievements rather than just looking at short-term achievements. Again, we need to invest in energy and infrastructure. This one, I think it's already in the pipeline. The more we have better infrastructures, the more our research is going to improve. And we are already in line with that one. And again, I just wanted to point out on digitalization, with the coming in of technology, with the young generation coming up, very enthusiastic about the technology. The policies that we have, we are moving towards digitalization. So with that, I feel we are going to be much more smarter rather than just focusing on the large numbers. Again, maybe on the human capital, this one is another key area that we need to emphasize. There's need for investment, starting with the universities. The syllabus has to be upgraded to meet the current challenges that we are facing. For Malawi, we are heavily hit with Cyclone Fred. So that one, the lessons that we learned could be put into the syllabus so that students are able to understand the current situation rather than just taking something business as usual. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fred, for speaking to Malawi's thinking longer term, thinking how can we more strategically invest so that our next generation are learning the lessons of today. Thank you. Other contributions? Yes, please.
Thank you very much. I think something that will trigger scaling up, first and foremost, we must invest in areas that are necessary to increase productivity, so that farming is seen as business. Second is that we should find a reasonable capital with low interest, low cost capital for farmers so that everybody is left behind. Because if we don't invest at all levels, then we shall lose. We must also engage in agriculture that is friendly to the environment. Actually, in your write-up, you say agriculture that is nature friendly. And finally, it is important that we develop policies that leaves no one behind. Every segment of our farming community should be attended to. Otherwise, the way to go is climate smart. We cannot change the trend of the world now. It is here we must deal with the problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency, and appreciate the very practical suggestions you've given us, as well as the very human side of it. Thank you for that. Other contributions?
Thank you, and thank you for the research who presented these very interesting findings. I'm Henry Nakletopolot from Uganda, and in addition to what my minister has already said, we observe that while many countries are investing in research, but the impact is largely negative. And I think in addition to saying we must invest from the market perspective, do research on what the market requires. So starting from the market would mean that you're developing technologies and innovations that are demand-driven, that will be taken up. But two, it also looks like many research technologies remain on the shelf. Therefore, doing research, but the adoption is very low. And I think to an extent is that it points to a weakness in extension delivery services. That research is there, but a linkage with extension is missing, or extension is weak. And therefore, the wills to take these innovations to the farmers is not there. So while researchers are doing research, the uptake is low because there is no dissemination. So I think what will really catalyze this should be strengthening this linkage, research, extension, farmer linkage in most of these countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Emphasizing that last mile to the farmers. Appreciate that. Yes, please.
Thank you so much. I'm Alex Bambona from Uganda. Just to add to what the Honorable Minister has put forward and my colleague here, you have talked of the human capital. And when we talk of human capital, sometimes we are thinking of the the graduates. But in addition to what my colleague has pointed out, there is a human capital of the farmer. So there is a need to create demand for these innovations. So the farmer, if the farmer has a high demand for these innovations, then that will be the highest sustainability. So the issue of mindset change for the farmer is very key. That these research research innovations have a stronger market, and the real market is the farmer, no one else. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Appreciating it's not just about dissemination. We need that, but we also need mindset shift. Thank you. Let's take a few more comments. I'm going to skip to another table, if I may, and then I will come back. Yes, please.
Thank you so much for your nice presentation. I appreciate your presentation. In the 5 priority actions, you started from increasing sustained research investment, develop the next generation of scientists to connect research to the wide agri-food and measure what matters. In my understanding, you jumped the extension. The research finding should be translated into extension knowledge or advisory service. So we have to focus on extension workers, farmers, demonstration, linkage between different actors. So instead of focusing only research, technology, innovation, it should be focusing on extension and advisory service. The knowledge should be translated to the advisory service. We need to focus on adoption and technology transfer. Thank you so much.
Thank you, madam. I saw a lot of heads nodding. Yes, in agreement. Other contributions will come here, and then you will wrap us up. Yeah.
I want to add the Zambian voice again. I think the smart investment in research is very critical. And I like what has been coming on the 2 tables about the extension component or the advisory component. And I think Uganda nailed it very well. Research, extension, and farmer linkage needs to be strengthened. But I think what I want to say is that there is need when setting the research agenda that it's done in a very participatory way. Let the farmers be involved. Let the extension officers also be involved. Now, one reason why public research failed is because the researchers set the agenda on their own, minus the farmers and the extension. So what happened was they researched in high-yielding beans or high-yielding rice, but they forgot that in our Zambian context, we prefer aromatic rice, a rice which has an aroma. But in other countries, they'll prefer rice which can easily be picked. So it's a high-yielding rice. People will not grow it because it's the same with beans. They will invest research in high-yielding beans. The Zambian community does not like a beans which is sweet. They prefer it not sweet. So over time, they would invest in high-yielding varieties, but they were not picked up. So now we need to involve farmers. What exactly do you want? Then we'll invest in what they want. And I think we'll have adoption rates very high. So we have a lot of beans varieties that haven't been picked on because that is not what the farmers want. So I feel our setting of our research agenda or research protocols should involve the farmers themselves. I'm coming from extension. I apparently head the extension service in our department, in our country. So we need to be involved as well because we interact with the farmers. Thank you.
Thank you. Participatory setting of research agendas, getting a lot of agreement. Yes, please.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the contributions from the rest of the members, especially the issue of mental health among the farmers. That's in line with the mindset change which is being implemented in Uganda. But I'm looking at it from the angle of incentives. I know that when researchers develop new varieties, they earn royalties. I know that people are earning money from carbon financing, but now the farmers who are implementing some of these CSA technologies, are we appreciating them? Can we start giving commissions in a way of motivating them? As simple as farmers who are making trenches, who are planting trees. I think we need to start appreciating them at that level so that they can be motivated. Thank you.
Thank you for that important point you've added. I'd like to invite Dr. Mutamba and Dr. Stodds to round us out, to offer any reflections you have after hearing these important inputs from our colleagues.
Is this on? Yes, it is. No, I think these were all excellent comments, and I have to say I agree with all of them, right? I think it's very, very difficult for me to present a 10-minute overview of what's happening in Africa, right? So these were very, very big numbers, and I completely agree. Extension plays a critical role in scaling agricultural innovations. That said, I also think that we often think too much in terms of smallholders, right? Smallholders are small, but they don't need to stay small forever, right? The idea is to really give them the tool and the business mindset as well to grow and to really start agri-businesses as well, right? So like I completely agree with the extension argument, and that is of course it's important for the poorest farmers on the ground, but it's also giving them the tools to really escape this poverty trap and really starting up meaningful businesses. And I think we are actually seeing already quite a few interesting examples. I have this horrible echo with the microphone, but across Africa, like some very interesting funding mechanisms. Like how do you involve the private sector more in setting this research agenda? I think Côte d'Ivoire in West Africa, I think is an excellent case, for example, because we talked about high value commodities. Like in Côte d'Ivoire, for example, coffee and cocoa are the high value commodities. And the government imposes a tax on the production of those commodities that goes directly to public sector agriculture research. And then they have this solidarity mechanism built in to also cover public research for commodities that are less high value, right? I think those kind of simple solutions are really things that need to be replicated in more countries. I think another very important point I heard the Minister of Agriculture of Uganda say is that agricultural productivity is really, really key. If you compare the Africa data to data from Latin America or Asia, we see that most of the agricultural sector growth comes from more land, more farmers, more people working on the land, but not necessarily because of productivity increases, right? And that's a very sharp contrast of what we're seeing in Asia and Latin America. So what does this mean for research? Research really, really needs to be organized better around priority areas. Currently, it's too fragmented. There are too many small countries trying to duplicate what their neighbors are doing. There are so many higher education, nonprofit, government agencies, all trying to focus on their little part of the research ecosystem. We really, really need the mechanisms and institutes to really come more closely together and conduct joint research on jointly identified priority areas. And those priority areas certainly need to be identified in conjunction with farmers and the private sector as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I've already said a lot. I will use half a minute. I'll lend half, the other half to my colleague, Dr. Msafiri. He had his hand up. He didn't get an opportunity to speak. So just to say that I think it has been very clear in a lot of the exchanges that the research agenda really needs to focus on what matters. And the right people will pay for research if it's delivering what really matters, to them. And I think since morning, the message has been clear. Government cannot do it alone. The development landscape is changing, in the negative sense in terms of the resources available. So the traditional approach to funding research will have to evolve. And if we're to match the ambitions we have set as a continent, it means this is an area that we really need to work at in terms of sustainable financing for it. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you, Manyehu. I think my name is Musafiri. I work with the Dr. Manyehu as advisor to the CEO of the NEPAD. I've been following these discussions. They are very interesting. But now we got clues to scaling climate smart agriculture. So we have the private sector, then we had R&D. So I concur with all ideas from the Honorable Minister of Uganda and the fellows. Now we're going to give the last piece. So in Africa, we have a problem because the private sector is, as the gentleman said, since the productivity is not there, so private don't see why they should invest their money in R&D together with the government. But on the other hand, even the part of the government, this R&D, if you are talking about R&D, it's money. We have seen that the investment or the expenditure in research is less than 1% of GDP. And then I think this all research, not only agriculture, I think he didn't specify if it's only for agriculture, but I assume all R&D in developing countries, including other sectors, less than 1% of GDP. That means we still have a problem. I will bring in the political will. If we realize that countries whose ministers of agriculture, ministers of finance, don't understand agriculture, no budget will be allocated to R&D in agriculture because they don't understand what will be the indirect effects on the economy once the bulk of the money, once 1% of GDP is invested in R&D, including majority in agriculture. So for me, I'm making 2 points. One is we need a political will, heads of state, ministers of finance in our countries. So I think the campaign should carry out to understand that investment or spending in R&D is very important. Number two, I would call upon people to understand that it's always about money. It's about money. So whatever we do, it's about money. So if we do whatever we say, but maybe I would also challenge it a bit, the organizer of this meeting, World Bank. What if we change also some of lending patterns? I've never seen, I don't know, as of my knowledge, if World Bank also can lend for R&D. Maybe it can be another clue that we can use to make sure there is money in R&D for agriculture. I submit.
Thank you very much. A very rich discussion, and it's always a good sign when you can't stop the flow. More people want to share their inputs. I want to thank you for the energy, the ideas, the insights that you've lent to this. I also want to appreciate the role of Your Excellency, Honorable Minister from Uganda, who has been with us all day today. Very much appreciate your presence, your inputs. It really shows us commitment. In real time commitment. Thank you. I would like to thank you all and say that today is indeed still just the beginning. Our colleague from Standard Bank is here with us, and he will be part of a very important conversation tomorrow morning, the very first session on financing CSA. We're going to be coming back to your very question. We will also have World Bank engaged in this conversation so we can talk more about how do we finance the scaling up of CSA. I would like to round us out today by once again saying thank you all for your participation, your vigorous participation, I should say. And I would like to invite you all to a reception, which will be happening just next door at the marketplace. It is starting just now. Please do return tomorrow if you are able. We will start at 9 a.m. Thank you all. I wish you a lovely evening.